Welcome to the 2025 Iowa State Student Government Vice Presidential Debate. My name is Santi Fajardo, and I'm the Election Commissioner for Student Government.
And my name is Claire Kosher, and I'm the Politics Editor for the Iowa State Daily. We would like to thank both the Pursley Rolls and Brant Vlasic campaigns for attending, as well as the Election Commission and the Iowa State Daily for their preparation leading up to tonight's event.
The debate structure is as follows. Each candidate will give a 90-second opening statement, followed by general questions for both candidates to answer. And then individual questions will be directed towards each candidate's platform. Both candidates will have 60 seconds to answer each question and 45 seconds for any rebuttal, with an additional 45 seconds for any back and forth between the candidates.
Following the questioning period, we will take a 10-minute break, and when we resume, we will ask questions that have been submitted by the student body.
A QR code will be posted on the live stream during our 5-minute break where you can submit your questions in a Google form. There is also QR codes here in the Great Hall, and at the conclusion of the debate, each candidate will have 90 seconds to make a closing statement.
Before the debate, this evening, Vlasic won a coin toss and elected to go first. So now you have 90 seconds for an opening statement.
Thank you. I'm standing up on this stage for one reason: to make your time as a student better. It is that simple. You won't hear my running mate or I say we think or we believe. Every single statement begins with "we will." That is because we will make your life in Ames safer. We will give you opportunities to get involved on campus, and we will ensure that student government supports you. My name is Will Vlasic, a sophomore majoring in agricultural systems technology, and I'm running to be your next student body vice president. When we built our platform, we looked across campus to make sure that it was applicable to every student. Whether you're an international student who traveled halfway across the world to come to this university, or you're a corn-fed Iowan who just traveled down Highway 30, we see you, and we will make your experience at this university better. My running mate, our team, and I have developed an ambitious plan, but don't get me wrong. Every single statement is a promise to make realistic, reasonable, and fiscally responsible change. If there's something I don't address tonight, DM at Brant Vlasic on Instagram. I'd love to talk about how a Brant Vlasic-led student government can make your time as a college student better. There are no false promises from Colby and I. We're about showing up early, leaving late, and executing on our platform. I'm excited for an evening of civil conversation about how we can make this university in Ames, Iowa, a better place. No matter who you are, what you believe in, or where you're at in your educational journey, Colby and I have your back.
Now for rolls.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Rolls. I'm a junior studying industrial design with a minor in political science, and for the past 2 years, I've currently served as the College of Design Senator, and as you may know, I'm currently running for Student Body Vice President, along with my friend Josie Pursley. She's over there. And over our time tonight, we'll get to discuss Josie and I's vision and goals for our campaign, as well as my leadership experience, as well as some challenge I may have experienced along the way, and just kind of what our kind of ultimate goals with our campaign points are, as well as some just issues we might run into along the way in the collaborations we can do whilst we're on campus, and just our goals to make Iowa State a better place for all students, regardless of how they identify or what their age or what their year or major is. We just want to make Iowa State a better place for all students. Thank you.
Thank you. And now beginning with our first topic of the night, your vision for student government. And this is to Senator Rolls. What do you believe is the role of student government?
Student government's main role at Iowa State is mainly just to represent our students and make sure their voices are heard. We want to improve their life on campus. Throughout my 2 years as senator, it's pretty much your main goal when you sign up is to represent the students and just to make Iowa State a better place for all of them. We have representatives from all colleges, and I feel like that's better for all of us, as we can gather aspects from things all across campus, from different majors and different programs, to see how we can improve Iowa State as a whole for all students, regardless of where they're from, if they're in design or if they're in agriculture. We can carry such a broad topic of ideas so we can just improve Iowa State for all students.
Thank you. And now, Vlasic, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, my vision for student government is, I think, one we all share, and that's that student government is responsible and visible. First, responsible. Student government needs to be responsible with student dollars and the student activity fee. Student government collectively distributes nearly $2.7 million worth of student activity fees across the campus, and it's our duty to be responsible with that money. Make sure it's going in the direction that students want and that it's executing on a vision that students want. The other thing is to be visible, right? Student government can't hide in the back rooms of the Memorial Union scared and away from everybody. You need to be out and in front of students. And throughout our campaign, Colby and I have tried to do those two things. We've tried to be responsible. We've been very clear about how we spent our money. We've advertised it well. And then the second thing, we've been visible. We've been all over campus in front of students, and we try to align ourselves with those two things that student government should be, because that's what students expect of student government.
Thank you. Now, Vlasic, what does your vision of an effective and efficient student government look like, and how will you work to create and maintain this vision of student government?
Yeah, an effective and efficient student government is one that executes on the priorities of student government, right? There's incredible amounts of communication. It's making sure that two events don't happen at the exact same time on the exact same day. That's something that student government needs to be better about. It means being in front of students and being responsible. And ultimately, like I mentioned, with that $2.7 million, you've got to distribute that across the entire university to over 30,000 students. And it's about being responsible with it. And the way you can do that is with good communication between the individual members of student government. So Colby and I, throughout our campaign, have developed an attitude of communication and open lines of communication where our team can come to us with any questions and concerns. And we plan to carry that same vision and that same attitude into being student body president and student body vice president.
Thank you. Senator Rolls?
I think a big part when you're trying to think of what makes student government efficient is kind of looking at its past. I've been in student government for 2 years. I've seen the student government at pretty much its peak, and well, currently, and pretty much at rock bottom. So there's kind of a lot you can take in from that history, and kind of what makes student government efficient is just having a large amount of people to kind of distribute tasks to. Student government isn't about one leader, not about a president and vice president. It's about their cabinet and the entire Senate. Currently, we have over 30 senators, and we're the best student government we've been so far. Just the amount of voices and bodies we can pack into our Senate and just get ideas and projects done, I think is what makes student government efficient and ultimately the best it can be. It's not really reliant on one person. Like I kind of mentioned, it's just about the entire group as a whole and filling student government with the best people possible.
Thank you. Vlasic, would you like to respond?
I'm all good.
Perfect. Next question, and this would be for for Senator Rolls. What are some challenges facing students that the student government can address?
Obviously, a big issue as of recent is with DI regulations. That's kind of a hot button topic currently, but on the university level, there isn't much that can be done regarded due to the Iowa law that got passed. But regarding with clubs, it doesn't necessarily apply to clubs. So we want to make sure that a lot of students don't necessarily have a safe space anymore if they identify differently. It's ultimately best to have students where they can feel safe and included, no matter how they identify or what they feel they want to be. It's ultimately best to feel students, make sure they feel included, regardless of what they are. And another big issue is affordability. We've had a lot of discussion about affordability in our current Senate. Our current affordability director, Bob Carver, has been doing a lot in terms of textbook affordability, and that's kind of what we want to focus on, is just making sure college is safe and affordable for all students, regardless of where they come from.
Thank you. Vlasic, same question. You have 60 seconds.
Absolutely. I believe an issue that students are facing on this campus is a lack of community. I think at the end of the day, if you're going to go to pay a lot of money to go to school somewhere, you should feel like you're welcome and you should feel involved. And so that's why our campaign is all about finding places for students to get involved here on campus. When they go home after classes, that shouldn't be the last time they step foot on campus. So one of those plans looks like enhancing homecoming week here at Iowa State. The Friday before the homecoming football game, we're talking about bringing artists onto Central Campus. We're talking about bringing food trucks, and we're talking about allowing students to create community around events that student government plans. It allows students to get onto campus and get involved. And I absolutely agree with Eric that affordability is an issue, and that's why we made a statement just this Sunday stating that we will stand in the way of any raises to the student activity fee, because ultimately affordability is a big issue, and Colby and I will be the first to step up and make sure that college remains affordable.
Senator Rolls, would you like to respond?
I think one question I have after I've kind of looked through your campaign points is you've talked a lot about increasing of funding towards clubs. I don't know if you specifically mentioned sports clubs, but it's been kind of a hot issue in our student government currently. But do you kind of have any ideas of how you would increase funding towards clubs whilst like not increasing the student activity fee? Because currently we're kind of allocating the most we can currently. Do you have any plans for that?
You have 45 seconds.
Yeah, so as I understand, student government currently runs on a surplus, so there's extra money to be spent, tucked away in rainy day accounts for when it never rains. So we're gonna use all the money that's available for students that are here today and students that are on campus here today. And then also, beyond getting more funding out to clubs, what the really big thing that we're trying to focus on is allowing clubs to know that they have the ability to get funding from student government. I can give you an example. I know one of the leaders within Collegiate Cattlemen, a club here on campus, and they're looking to buy a new grill for fundraising events. And I asked them, have you ever thought about reaching out to student government for funding? And they said, oh, I didn't know they give out money. So one of our big things is getting out in front of students, making sure that leaders and student orgs on campus realize that there's funding available for student government that they can take advantage of.
If you'd like to respond, you have 45 seconds left.
Okay. I would like to mention that student government does not operate at a surplus. We operate at a deficit. We spend more money than we take in, and we pull from our reserves to currently fund. It doesn't necessarily detract from our operations, but it is just kind of something to take into account if we were to fund more clubs, that we'd be operating further into a deficit. So that's kind of all I had to mention.
Would you like to respond?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Money is being pulled out of other accounts, and it makes me wonder, why is a student that went to school here 10 years ago just finally getting their money spent today? We think that if you come here to Iowa State University this year and you pay into the student activity fee this year, you should reap the benefits this year while you're a student. It shouldn't be stored away in some account down the line for a student 10 years from now to be able to take advantage of. You should have all of your money spent this year while you're a student, because ultimately that's the point of the student activity fee.
You have 10 seconds to respond.
While I do sort of agree with that, I think it's all well and good that we have our accounts for surpluses, but when you kind of take into account like I mentioned, we're operating at a deficit.
Time. Thank you for that. Moving on to questions about your experience with leadership and challenges. Vlasek, how have you demonstrated leadership at Iowa State, and how does that apply to your role as vice president if elected?
Yeah, I think leadership really comes down to, there's like a big overarching view of leadership, right? Which is like standing up on a stage like this and speaking and wearing a fancy suit and then having the ability to influence other people. But I think what leadership here at Iowa State University for me has looked like is being a good friend and advocate for others. When I'm sitting in a physics lecture and the person next to me has their head in their hands confused, that's being a leader by turning over to them, giving them a bump on the shoulder and asking if you can help them. As a student here on Iowa State University's campus, I've had the ability to step up and advocate for other people every step of the way, whether that be in roles such as this one on a really large scale or just by being a good friend, peer, and classmate. Right? Being a leader on campus is something that everybody has the ability to do, and if elected to serve in this position, that would be my ultimate goal. Give other people the ability to become leaders, both in really large scales and small scales as well.
Thank you. Now, Senator Rolls.
Could you remind me about the question? Sorry.
Yeah. How have you demonstrated leadership at Iowa State, and how does that apply to your role as vice president if elected?
Yes, sorry. So like I've kind of mentioned before, I've served as a senator for 2 years, the college design senator. When I was first elected, well, I guess I can give a little bit of background. You kind of have, all colleges have their student councils, so you kind of have your engineering student council, LAS, health and human sciences, all colleges have one, but the college design didn't have one since about 2016, when they just didn't have anybody to take up that leadership role. So it was kind of my first priority when I got elected. As you know, I signed up to represent students, and if there's not sort of a way to get that information in the student voices, through that student council, that kind of makes my job a lot harder, because it's a lot harder to reach people when I'm just one person and there's 1,400 design students. So I think I gathered a bunch of people that I was friends with and just who was recommended to me. We started in about September, got it finished in December, and it's currently going really well. So,
Vlasic, would you like to respond?
I'm okay.
Perfect. And this question is for Senator Rolls. You will face many difficult situations as Vice President of Student Government. What is the most difficult decision you've ever had to make during your last leadership position, and how did you arrive at this decision? 60 seconds.
I don't know if I've had a ton of necessarily difficult questions that I've had to deal with. There have been difficult situations. Like I've kind of mentioned before, there was a lot of, I don't know if I actually have mentioned it before, sorry. There's kind of a lot of issues with the previous administration, whether that's kind of just on sort of like an out of Senate level or just kind of in Senate. I think kind of the hardest thing to deal with there was keeping everybody level-headed. It was kind of a blame game for a while. People were unreasonably blaming each other for stuff that didn't happen or stuff that was blown out of proportion. There's been many times where I've been called level-headed, and I think kind of that's one thing that I've been having to do is just keep people grounded and give a neutral input. That's what I think I've been pretty good at in student government, is giving my honest opinion and just making sure everybody stays happy and friendly.
Thank you. Vlasic?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to serve in numerous leadership positions that have put me into a situation to have to make really difficult decisions. One that I think correlates really well to this position as vice president of the student body is being a vice president of the Iowa FFA Association. If you're not familiar, the Iowa FFA Association is the largest career and technical student organization in the state of Iowa. And so I had the opportunity to represent nearly 20,000 FFA members in the state of Iowa and sit on the board of directors. The board of directors that overseed over $1.2 million in funding, that directed nearly 30,000 ag students in the state of Iowa, and then ultimately put on and executed a 7,000 person event over in Hilton Coliseum in April. And in that position, I had to make a ton of incredibly difficult decisions. While sitting on that board of directors, I was surrounded by a lot of people that were much older and much wiser than me, and I had to make decisions on where we were going to choose for the location of future state conventions, something that impacted me far beyond my years within FFA. I had to make decisions on how funding was spent within the organization, and that was something that impacted thousands of other people beyond myself. I had to make those difficult decisions every day.
Senator Rolls, would you like to respond?
No.
Perfect.
For the final question in this topic, this is to Vlasic. If elected, how will you navigate situations where your personal values conflict with the majority opinion in student government?
I think you really have to remember what we say when we say majority opinion, right? Student government, in its largest part, is made up of Senate, over 30 individual members who were elected and selected to be able to represent their constituencies and ultimately the students of Iowa State University. And so if the Senate were to make a decision that I disagreed with, you have to remember that I have my personal values and opinions, but then you also have people who represent the entire university and their individual colleges and constituencies, right? And you have to respect the decision made by that large of a group of individuals. Is it okay to stand up and share your opinion and share what you believe in from time to time? Absolutely. Is it of any value to step up and stand in the way of a large majority decision? No. I think it's important to share what you value, but not stand in the way of what other people believe in.
Thank you for that. Senator Rolls?
I think I kind of have to second exactly what Will said. Senate is largely made up of senators. Like I said, there's over 30 of us, and we all represent over 30,000 students here at Iowa State, 30,400 and some. But we all represent our students, and if the Senate makes a decision, like a unanimous decision to fund something that the president and vice president disagrees with, there's not really much you can do. If you may have an opinion against it, I think it's best you stay neutral and non-biased. Your opinion may be biased, but you're kind of going up against the word of over 30,000 students, and it might not be the best just because you might have a different position and might see things differently. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Vlasic, would you like to respond?
I'm okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next topic of diversity. Iowa State is a majority white campus with over 70% of undergraduates identifying as white, and all executive candidates tonight identify as white. How will you ensure that the student government remains inclusive and representative of the diverse student voices within our university? Vlasic.
I think one of the biggest things about being representative of the entire campus, no matter what you look like, where you're from, or what you believe in, is by showing up in other people's lives. So Colby and I have realized something. So every single member of student government has to participate in office hours. Majority of the time, those office hours are taken in the Memorial Union. And a majority of the time, nobody shows up to those office hours, right? Because nobody knows about it. And Colby and I had a thought. How can we get in front of as many students as possible and share what student government can do for them? And our ultimate vision is not to sit in the Memorial Union for office hours. It's being out on campus. It's being in Jardine. It's being in Curtis. It's being in the engineering buildings. It's showing up in front of students, because then ultimately, when you know what students believe in, you know what they're thinking, you know what the general attitude is, you can execute on that within student government. And I think the thing about showing up for other people allows us to be a more diverse and ultimately more representative student government.
Senator Rolls.
Like I've kind of mentioned before, currently there are issues with DI regulations. So a lot of students that may identify differently, that's not heterosexual or straight, currently have kind of not really necessarily been disenfranchised, but they don't have a safe space on the university level where they can be with their peers and have a space where they feel included and supported. Like I mentioned, we want to make sure those students have a safe space, regardless if it's at the university level. And I think another big thing is, especially with graduate students, to my knowledge, a lot of them might not necessarily identify as white, but regardless, getting students that don't identify as white, I think making sure they all have a space where they can feel supported and included is also a big priority of ours.
Thank you. Vlasic, would you like to respond?
Yeah, Eric mentioned a little bit about safe places on campus, and I know some recent legislation has changed things, but it has not stripped this university of the ability for you to feel safe and comfortable. And I think it starts with the people you're around. So that means student government is representative of the student body by being approachable and by showing up for other people across campus. And in terms of safe spaces on campus, I think there's some places on campus where students can feel at home. And I think one of those first places where I feel at home is within my student organization. So I encourage you, if you feel like your safe place has been taken away from you on campus, or you feel like you lack that amenity on campus, I encourage you to start a student organization and receive funding from student government in order to help repair some of the changes that have been made.
Senator Rolls, would you like to respond?
Yes, I would kind of say that is pretty much what I was saying regarding DEI regulations. There are a lot of clubs that may be focused on non-binary or just sort of lesbian or just some other LGBTQ plus sort of organizations. So that's kind of what we were mentioning. We want to work with them to make sure if they need support starting a club, we'd be more than happy to help them. But if there's currently already existing clubs, we'd love to support them and their organization to help promote their events, to make sure all students have a space where they can feel safe and included. It doesn't necessarily mean that Iowa State isn't a safe space for all students, but we just want to make sure all students, regardless of what they are, if they're non-white, if they're LGBTQ, or if they're white, we want to make sure they have a safe space.
Thank you.
Kind of similar to both of your responses, Iowa State is currently implementing 10 DEI recommendations from the Board of Regents, as well as provisions from the Iowa State Legislature that has led to the closure of organizations such as the Center. How are you currently addressing the recommendations, and how would you plan to work on DEI as a whole with the university administration as vice president? Senator Rolls, you're first.
I think a big thing, kind of going off of differently what I've already been mentioning, student government has its own IDEA director that focuses on inclusivity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, yes, accessibility, sorry. So honestly, a big thing would be to work with them, just reach out to students on campus and just see what their needs are. We've already had a lot of meetings we had a meeting with the director of student counseling 2 days ago, yesterday, whatever. But we also have a meeting with the director of student wellness tomorrow, just to kind of reach out and just see what they find issues are and seeing how we can work with them to help students as a whole as that's obviously our main goal is to make sure students are safe and included, like I've mentioned, regardless of how they identify. And that's pretty much our main goal with that fact. Thank you.
Vlasic?
Yeah, and specifically the 10 Board of Regents regulations, Senate File 2435 that specifically address diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then federal changes. At the end of the day, that's law. It's made by people who are elected to make those decisions, and we can't change that. But what we can do, like I mentioned earlier, is remember that those changes didn't affect student organizations and/or student government. It's strictly university administration. We have the ability, if you feel like you've lost your place on campus or you feel like you've lost your community, feel free to reach out and ask Colby and I how you can start a student organization. We'd love to be able to walk you through the process. And then in turn, we have talked quite extensively about how we want to simplify the process, because a really complex funding process that makes student organization funding really complex, at the end of the day, that is not accessible for any student. So we're going to simplify the funding process, help you start a student organization so that you can find your community and maintain your community here on campus.
Senator Rolls, would you like to respond?
No, thank you.
Next question. Iowa State encourages collaboration with diverse student organizations. How would you ensure meaningful partnerships rather than just symbolic representation? Vlasic, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ways that we can include other organizations within student government is bring them in the fold on events that we're doing. So we've talked quite extensively about this homecoming idea. We're going to make homecoming something that's really special for all students. And when we say all students, we don't just mean individuals in student government or individuals in the College of Ag. We're talking about students across campus. And so when we go to sit down on day one to plan out what homecoming is going to look like in collaboration with Student Union Board and Homecoming Central, we're going to invite student organizations from across the campus. No matter what college you're in, no matter what your ultimate goal as a student organization is, we want input from other organizations, and we want to sit around a really long table with a lot of chairs around it to be able to create an event that's really special for every single student and appeals to every single student, and an event where every single student can feel community.
Thank you. Senator Rolls?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Of course. How would Iowa State encourages collaboration with diverse student organizations? How would you ensure meaningful partnerships rather than just symbolic representation?
Yeah, it's something Josie and I have been working on since we pretty much started running. We've been reaching out to as many clubs as we can, pretty much whoever answers our emails. We just want to sit down with clubs, regardless of what they are, just to make a connection. We sit there for like 15, maybe 30 minutes just to connect and just talk on a deeper level that's obviously not politics. We just want to get to know people. And obviously there's over 30,000 students here at Iowa State. We all want to have their voices heard, and just making sure we're connecting with our students on a deeper level that's not just policy and just interpersonal necessarily. Another thing is just kind of making sure clubs feel included in our student government. Our senates are open to everybody. They can come in and just watch them whenever you want. You can watch them online. And obviously another big issue is kind of our funding process. We pretty much fund a lot of clubs regardless of what they do, and it's like we're already open to making exceptions kind of regardless of what the clubs are, but we just want clubs to feel included.
And that is time. Vlasic, would you like to respond?
Yep. Similar to Eric and Josie, we have made it a point to reach out to nearly every single student organization here on campus, because that's what representative government looks like. It means reaching out and showing up for every single person, no matter who they are. And that's why on the very first day of the campaign at 8 a.m. in the morning on February 1st, we sent emails to nearly 600 student organizations here on campus, reaching out, not only sharing what we believe in and what our vision is for this university, but also asking how we can support them. If we had the opportunity to serve in this incredible position, how can we show up for these student organizations and make sure that their priorities are executed on? How can we make sure that they feel supported by student government? So we've tried to reach out to every single student organization and let them know that we're here for them and we're ready to execute on the vision that they decide.
Thank you. Senator Rolls, ready to respond?
No.
Moving on to campus impact. According to the Thielen Student Health Center, the on-campus health center experienced 20,381 total mental health contacts from 2023 to 2024. Considering these numbers, how do you plan to address the rising need for student mental health resources? Senator Rolls, you're first.
Yeah, I think I've kind of topped it already, but one of our main points is mental health support and inclusivity. we just want to make sure they know about all the resources they have available to them, and possibly even improving those resources to make sure they're more accessible for all students. Like I mentioned, we had a meeting with the director of student counseling, and it went really well. We just wanted kind of to know how the process worked and kind of form a relationship on that level to make sure we're not only reaching out to students, but also reaching out to faculty that run our organizations here at the university level to make sure we can collaborate with them and improve them if so needed. So we just kind of wanted to make sure students have access and the knowledge about all the resources available to them, especially mental health related. There's not necessarily a limit on free therapy sessions through the student therapy services. They're more lower level, sort of like introductory therapy sessions, but
That's time. Now, same question to Vlasic.
Yeah, we have to remember that mental health counseling on campus, the fact that it's free, the fact that you can get online therapy is a result of the work that student government's done. And Colby and I have a firm commitment to continue that work with those partners who execute on those services, ask them what the demand is, ask how we can support them in meeting that demand. And at the end of the day, we have to remember that student government, we are not mental health counselors, we are not therapists. It's our job to support the students of Iowa State University by supporting the individuals who provide therapy and counseling and continue to build a phenomenal relationship that works hand in hand and doesn't pull away from their ultimate mission of making a campus that is strong mentally.
Rolls, would you like to respond?
yes. I feel like whilst it is important as a leader to work with the faculty, we are student leaders. We're meant to support the students as much as possible, and if it means helping someone that's having a mental issue, I'm more than happy to do it. Josie and I already actually kind of have disabilities regarding mental health. It doesn't impact us in any way. It just gives us more experience in that field, and just kind of more knowledge into the fact and what to do in those situations. Obviously, a big thing with the leader is directing students to the right resource. That's kind of what I mentioned. We want to make sure students know their resources that they have available to them. And as leaders, we have a duty to help students, whether that's ourselves or directing themselves to a resource.
Vlasic, do you wish to respond?
Yeah, I mentioned at the beginning of the debate, that person sitting next to me in my physics lecture and turning to them and asking them if they need help or what can I do to support them. And I think that's what you can really do to show up one-on-one for students here on this campus is as a student leader, you have the ability to impact individuals around you. And so it means showing up for that person next to you in physics because you never know what they're going through. It means reaching out to friends when you haven't talked to them in a while because you never know what they're going through. It means showing up for other people. And I absolutely agree with Eric that if someone's having a crisis or someone's dealing with problems out of their hands, first you should talk to them and see what you can do to support them, and then direct them to the incredible resources that we have here on campus, like online therapy and mental health counseling. I think it's important not only to be a friend to somebody else, but also a resource.
Rolls, you have 10 seconds to respond.
Do I have to respond?
You don't have to.
No, I'm okay.
Okay.
Perfect. And the next question. Communication between student government and university leadership is essential to achieving many of both of your campaign's goals. What concrete steps would you take to improve communication between student and university leadership? Vlasic, you go first, 60 seconds.
Absolutely. If you walk around campus today, you'll see people scrolling on Snapchat, on Instagram, on X, or whatever it is, right? Students are on their phones a lot, and they utilize social media to communicate with each other. So student government needs to take advantage of that platform to connect with students. Colby and I have already started that here at our campaign. We have over 700 individuals, 700 students here at Iowa State following us on our Instagram, following along with our campaign, interested and infatuated by student government. I think we need to continue that same effort and energy towards social media. We have to remember that this is one of the best ways to reach young people is through social media, and so we need to take advantage of that, similar to how we have in our campaign. That means appointing people and saying that your number one priority is to make sure that the Instagram is updated at the end of the Senate that addresses what we've done. It means being open and transparent by using the number one communication method that young people do in America.
Senator Rolls, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah. I think a big thing and kind of in response to that, student government already has an excellent PR team. This year we've done really well with advertising our events and just sort of making sure students know what's going on in student government. We just got a new website this year, and it's a really nice website, honestly, compared to the last one. But it just even if just going on the website, you have direct access to what our Senate is. It's like who's all running in the elections, whether that's executive or Senate. You get to know about all of our committees and who's on them, funding resources, sorry. We just want to make sure that our PRs, as excellent as it can be, to make sure students actually know what's going on in our organization. We're already sort of kind of in the background. We support the students, but we want to make sure the students know we're supporting them. And another big thing that we kind of done recently is the Know Your Leader series. We're working directly with faculty to make sure students actually know what our faculty members do on campus.
In 2023, there were 17 reported instances of sexual assault and harassment. What initiatives would you implement to strengthen sexual assault prevention efforts on campus, and how would you ensure they are effective? Senator Rolls.
Yeah, our last campaign point is sexual violence prevention. We had a meeting with Chief Newton about it. Our main sort of point on that is creating a sexual violence prevention task force. The ISU Police has done a ton of research into the fact, and just even externally, there's a lot of research into the fact of sexual violence. So we kind of want to combine all of our resources into one central unit where they can do more research into it and do some surveys and see what it would actually work for our campus. And we're more than happy to research into that as well and collaborate with them just to find a solution that might work at Iowa State in general, because it's obviously a big issue on our campus and nobody should have to experience that. We've also been kind of working with student wellness to support Green Dot and Green Flags, and that's kind of focused on sexual violence prevention as well as what to do. Bystander training, I believe, is what Green Flags is currently focused on, and they're currently making a new one that focuses on what to do if someone has experienced sexual violence.
Vlasic?
Yeah, I think we all know that one instance of sexual violence on this campus is one too many, and we're tired of talking about it, and we want to do something about it. And so that's why, as a team, when we didn't have to, when no one forced us to, we have a nearly 60-member team that gathered that first Sunday they campaigned in Curtis Hall, and we had every single person in there Green Dot trained on a Sunday. And I think there's an appetite on this campus for knowledge about reducing the amount of sexual violence, and I think we need to get that in front of students. And Colby and I think one of the best spots to be able to introduce sexual violence training to students here at Iowa State University is when they first step foot on campus. So whether that looks like their orientation or Cyclone Welcome Weekend, or even in their 101 and 110 classes, right? 20 minutes could mean the difference in somebody else's lives. And so we're gonna advocate every step of the way to partner with the partners we have on campus that work in sexual violence and make sure that this problem that we're facing, that's honestly disgusting, ceases to exist.
Senator Rolls, would you like to respond?
Sure. I think another thing to mention is all members of student government are Green Flags and Green Dot trained. I think we have a meeting every semester with student wellness about it. And I think another thing that Josie and I wanted to do is offer that training to clubs. Even if they reach out or not, we reach out to clubs and see if they want to actually have that training as well, because not a ton of clubs actually know about, they can actually get that training done. So we just want to spread that word and make sure everybody is aware of all the resources and all the information regarding the subject, as obviously it's a topic that when the information is spread out there, people are more likely to do something about it, and the incidents are less likely to happen. So we want to spread that information and make sure all students have accessibility to Green Flags training.
Vlasic, would you like to respond to that?
Absolutely. I'm on the same page as Eric. We should get in front of student organizations. So that's why with our simplified student org funding process, when student organizations, more of them now, come to student government to receive funding and receive support and receive resources, we'll be able to say, here's the funding that you need to be able to make your incredible event happen. What do you think about taking the next 20 minutes out of your next meeting next month to be able to have someone from Green Dot come in and give a short 20-minute training? And I think the responses that we're going to get from that is going to be pretty incredible. So I think if we combine the ability by reaching out to more students through student government and then providing them the resources about sexual violence on this campus, it'll allow us to take out two problems at once and allow us to continue to advocate for students and make this campus safer for everyone who goes here.
Thank you.
Now on to questions aimed at the candidates' specific platforms. Vlasic, how do you plan to navigate your role as vice president despite not having prior experience in student government?
It's a fabulous question, and I love to talk about it because it allows me to share some of the really cool things I've been able to be involved with and how that's going to correlate with this position within student government. So at the beginning of this debate, I talked about my role representing nearly 20,000 Iowa FFA members in the largest career and technical student organization in the state of Iowa. And that was an incredible opportunity to be able to step up in a very similar role and lead on a really high level. I've also had the ability to serve on various councils and be involved in student organizations just as a student. I think a lot of times we can join student government in our freshman year and get rolled into the idea of that's the only part there is. But I think it's important that we have voices that are outside of student government, someone who has a fresh face, fresh perspectives, and also perspectives from other student organizations. So I've walked the road, I've seen what other people are up to on this campus, and I'm excited to be able to bring those valuable perspectives back to student government.
Senator Rolls, would you like to respond?
Sure. I think you mentioned how you were representing Iowa State FFA. I think one issue that I could possibly foresee with that, and I'm not necessarily being to slight you in any way, but something I've noticed is that your guys' campaign team is primarily made of ag members. Do you and I won't necessarily mean anything else, but do you is there a reason why that is? Or do you have any issues that would possibly be reaching out to other members outside of ag?
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go down to Georgia for a conference. And while I was in Georgia and while I was in Atlanta, I had the opportunity to tour the Georgia State Capitol. And there I met the Speaker of the House there at the Georgia State Capitol. And he didn't come from an ag background, but I got to talking to him and sharing a little bit of my experience being a student here in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. And he goes, boy, in his southern accent, he said, boy, those ag people, they know how to get stuff done. And I was like, I totally agree with you. And I think that's part of the reason why our campaign team is made of a lot of Cal students, because they know how to show up early, they know how to leave late, and they know how to execute on a vision. And so the reason why we have a lot of Cal students is, another reason is just because we're both Cal's majors, so that's the people we see in class every day. But I encourage you to look at across the rest of our campaign team and see the diverse colleges that they come from.
You have 45 seconds to respond. Senator Rolls.
I guess I don't necessarily know the makeup of whatever your campaign team is, but could you actually enlighten me to see how many members are not from ag, if I'm allowed to ask?
Not from ag. I think there's a good dozen or so, maybe. I guess we don't have the exact metric, but quite a few. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, quite a few.
I think another big thing is not necessarily being, I'm not going to call it biased towards ag, but I feel like saying that Cal's members, ag members, have the attitude to get things done is almost necessarily biased, because it's more just a personality thing. That's saying that other majors don't have that same drive, and I don't think that's fair to everybody else. There's so much more to Iowa State than ag, and I feel like that's necessary to reach out to them and give them an opportunity to be on a team. Our campaign team, I don't think we have two people from the same college, well, besides political science, but we have a ton of other people from our campaign team from different majors.
You have about 20 seconds to respond. Blaszczyk.
Yeah, I wasn't insinuating that other people don't work hard. I was just highlighting the incredible work ethic that our team has to execute a really pretty incredible campaign. But maybe next week, when we post the rest of our team, we'll post a little graphic. But I can almost guarantee you that people will be pretty pleased to see the incredible diversity within our team, but people from all different colleges, all different backgrounds and experiences.
Thank you both. Now for Senator Rolls. Your campaign is proposing to create a new platform for students to buy and sell tickets. How will you ensure that this system is secure, fair, and accessible to all students while preventing issues like prices or scams?
Mm-hmm. A big issue, that's actually a big issue we've heard about from just all of our clubs we've been to and all the halls we went to. We've heard from advisors that students, because your primary metric for selling tickets right now is the Snapchat stories, and that probably isn't the most secure thing. You can message somebody, hey, can you Venmo me $20 for this ticket? And you Venmo them, but you might not get something back. And that's obviously not what we want to happen. So that's our main priority, is making sure it's safe and secure. We're not necessarily exactly concrete if it's going to be an app or a tab on the student government website. We've had conversations with our IT director currently, just to get an idea down of how it may work and how it may look actually. we've had meetings with the athletics department just to see how it would kind of work on their side and kind of see how it would work in general. Obviously, we want to verify that students on that platform are actually students. Sorry. So kind of a big thing would be verifying that you're actually a student with your Iowa State email and actually verifying you actually have a ticket.
Blashek, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I think one other option we have to sell tickets is through the ISU Ticket Trader Facebook. I saw a few coming up today for the basketball game tonight against our opponents. So people have quite a few variety of ways to sell tickets, and I guess I haven't heard necessarily from very many students that they're displeased with these systems.
Senator Rolls, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I would kind of like to mention that you kind of could get the same issue with Facebook as you do with Snapchat. And I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily anymore, but when you're kind of wanting to actually look through your Snapchat stories and it's like 95% tickets and 2% people complaining about how many tickets there are on the Snapchat stories, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing if you're just trying to engage with your community. We want to make sure that our platform will be safe and secure, and I think making our own in-house app is the best way to ensure that and not necessarily relying on any outside platform.
Flashlight, 45 seconds.
There's also futons and couches and microwaves and TVs listed on there every day. People post a lot of stuff on there. That's just what college students do when they have a platform to post so the entire university can see. It's just a big marketplace pretty much on that Snapchat story, and I think it'll continue to be a big marketplace whether or not there's a website to sell aftermarket tickets to students.
Senator Rolls, you have 10 seconds.
I think I'm okay, thank you.
Moving on to the next question. This is to Vlasic. In your platform, you mentioned a concert in Central Campus on the Friday of homecoming week. What does this look like, and how will you implement this?
I think the word concert is a huge huge simplification of what we're trying to execute. I mentioned a little bit at the beginning that not only will we have like a big, well-known artist come onto campus, which is, to be honest, really sweet to have someone of prominence who people have on Apple Music on our campus, right? But we're also talking about bringing in local Ames artists. We're also talking about bringing in students who play music and putting them on a stage on Central Campus and giving them a platform to display their talents to the student body. We're talking about having the ability to have food right there on campus so students have a reason to come onto campus. If you have an Iowa State student ID, you'll be able to get in and experience the action. And what it is and how we're going to execute it on it is a three-way collaboration. It's a collaboration between Student Union Board, Homecoming Central, and Iowa State student government, and really anybody else who is excited about this and wants to be involved in it. So we're going to get a lot of people together in one room on day one and figure out how we're going to execute an event like this. But I can promise you this, it's completely possible.
Senator Rolls, would you like to respond?
Yes. I think while, yes, it may be possible, but there's a difference between possible and feasible. Especially because Greek Week is in the fall. It's not in the fall, sorry. But there'd be a lot of issues with trying to organize that event along with what's currently taking place during Greek Week. With the feasibility being alone in terms of the organization, but funding is another big issue. If you're advertising to have this big event on campus and increasing funding for students, that it kind of doesn't work together if you're not trying to increase the student fee.
Flashlight, you have 45 seconds.
A couple things. So generally fall is sometimes warm, but homecoming is in November, and so it's generally fairly cool then. And so that weather necessarily shouldn't be an issue. In fact, it's not an issue because Homecoming Central already has a stage on Central Campus where they do things like Yell Like Hell and other things that are for homecoming. So people are already out there on Central Campus the Friday before the homecoming football game. We're just talking about getting more students out there, right? So Homecoming Central already puts a stage there, and we're talking a little bit more money. What if we make a little bit bigger stage? Allow them to display the great things that this university has on a little bit larger level. Student Union Board already has contracts with providers that bring in artists. We're just talking about a collaboration with them. We don't think that this is going to be an incredibly expensive event for the amount of value that students are going to get from it.
Senator Rolls, you have 45 seconds.
I don't know if I would call it necessarily not very expensive when you kind of take into account already how much Greek Week would cost and how much homecoming costs. And kind of when I was talking about, it's like, it is kind of, it's in the fall semester, that's what I meant, sorry. But kind of when you're trying to make different organizations collaborate, it is difficult, especially when you come and take communication to an account and making sure all the things are put in the right place and finances are involved. Especially when you kind of bring in food trucks. Those are also very expensive, and having all the necessary trainings done, especially food training, that takes a long time and collaboration, as well as just having the expenses to make sure food trucks are there as well. I feel like it might be a little more expensive than you think.
You have 45 seconds, Vlasic.
Yeah, food trucks would, with 10,000 students coming onto campus, I think a lot of food trucks would take the opportunity to pull up onto campus and have the ability to sell a lot of food to a lot of different students. I don't think the food trucks would be an incredibly expensive piece. I think we've already had conversations with ISU PD about how we make it a safe event. They would have to bring in extra people to make that Friday a success, and we'd have to look at outside security options, which are, you're correct, a little bit expensive, but I think we could be willing to spend a little bit more money if it meant that an event on that level would be secure. And so that's why we've had those conversations now before we have to execute on it, because we don't want any student getting hurt or injured there.
Senator Rolls, you have 10 seconds.
I'm trying to make this quick. One issue I currently see is our past administration tried to get a concert done, and that hasn't been seen anything yet, so I would kind of
And that is time.
worried about it.
This question is for Senator Rolls. Your campaign proposes implementing easy recycling options for off-campus students. How do you plan to do this, and how would you ensure this initiative is both feasible and sustainable in the future? You have 60 seconds.
Sorry. Josie and I are really interested in recycling and sustainability in general. We're both very passionate about it. We've had meetings with Director of Sustainability Mary Rankin and Director of Recycling Steve Coates about it. They've both kind of mentioned the amount of potential they see in the system, as well as current issues with it. Currently, there are issues with our recycling system and it just getting contaminated, but we want to make sure that the PR and marketing is done as best as it can be to make sure students know what can be recycled and what can't, just to kind of push the idea out there as much as we can. As students are aware of what can and can't be recycled, they might decide it's worth their time, or just not as hard as they may have thought, and actually know like what bins, like what goes into what bin and what doesn't, and just making sure everything is clearly marked so students actually know what goes where.
Vlasic, you have 45 seconds to respond.
Now, right on Duff Ave, the city of Ames has a recycling facility where you can recycle nearly all of your daily consumables. So if you want to recycle and you live off campus, it's as easy as putting your recycling in the back of your car and driving over to Duff and dropping it off and sorting it out. It's very clearly marked. You can tell exactly what needs to go where. In fact, I've taken advantage of the facility. It's a really simple facility, and we're grateful for the city of Ames implementing a really recent change, such as adding recycling. But on-campus recycling, in terms of on-campus recycling, the trash that's collected in those trash compactors is brought down to Des Moines and recycled and sorted there. So on campus, we're pretty sustainable in terms of dealing with our trash and recycling. And then if you live off campus, like I said, feel free to take advantage of the free 24-hour service that the city of Ames offers.
Senator Rolls, you have 45 seconds.
I would kind of like to mention not all students that live off campus have access to a car. There are a ton of graduate students that live off campus in SUV, or just maybe even students that just don't know how to drive or just can't. They don't have access to a car, so they wouldn't be able to use the Ames resources. And I think it's also worth noting I've had a lot of relationships with the city of Ames. Ames is also having very similar issues in terms of recycling on the city level. Ames has about 5 trash services, and only 2 of them offer recycling. That's not much we can do at the university level, but I just think it's also something to take into account. The city is also having these issues, so it would be worth working with them as well and seeing what resources and what research they have done into the subject to see
And that
if
is
we can
time.
improve everything.
Vlasic, you have 45 seconds to respond.
In terms of the 2 out of the 5 trash services that offer recycling, one fact about them, if you've ever had to look into recycling for your own place like I have, is that you realize you have to pay for the recycling. And we all know college students, we live on a tight budget. Money isn't just free to throw around, and recycling, adding that onto your trash use is expensive, right? And so that's why we worked with the city of Ames to develop that place on Duff, but hopefully in the future we could expand that. But at the end of the day, it's really expensive. You have to buy land, you have to buy facilities, you have to create a coordination system to remove the recycling. But that's definitely a conversation we'd be willing to have with the city of Ames and the folks who take care of our waste.
Senator Rolls, 45 seconds.
Whilst yes, the trash services that include recycling are more expensive, that's nothing a individual resident could do. That is kind of negotiated through the landlord in most cases, as far as I know. But I feel like that's something to take into account. And yes, there are issues, but I feel like that's exactly why we should reallocate all of our resources on campus, just to make sure our resources on campus are as efficient as they can be without spending a ton of money. You don't just get to throw money at a problem and get it solved. You have to allocate your resources correctly and make sure everything is as efficient as it can be.
Thank you.
To Vlasic, you propose expanding transportation to the Des Moines airport. What specific steps will you take to do this?
We've already taken the first step, and that was a conversation with Iowa State's Director of Transportation, Jeremy Paul. It was before Thanksgiving. Colby and I drove over there, and we sat down in his office for over an hour, and we talked about this issue that we heard about, which was students have a hard time getting to the airport. I mean, look, we know that Uber and Lyft at 4 in the morning in Ames, Iowa is just not reliable, and if you do get an Uber or Lyft, it's gonna be incredibly expensive, well over $100. And so the Department of Transportation offers a shuttle to and from the airport. It can be group or individual rides, and that price fluctuates because the price of gas goes up and down, the price of employees goes up and down. A ton of factors play into the cost, and what we really want to do is we want students to know that they have consistent, reliable, inexpensive transportation. So we want to work with the Director of Transportation and the Department of Transportation to help level that off. So students know when they go to Iowa State University and they need to get to the airport that they can have a flat rate that they will pay all year in order to get home to their family and friends.
Senator Rolls, would you like to respond?
Sure. I'm not 100% sure on this, but to my knowledge, it is pretty much already a flat rate. I believe the price when the service was initially started was $60, and it has been negotiated down to $50, and then I'm not sure if it's been negotiated down to $40, but those have been talks with students on campus that the shuttle to the airport wasn't very affordable for students, so they lowered the price. And I feel like working with them to just possibly see if we can fund them a little bit more, or just kind of start a program where we can lower that price further for students. I think kind of as well touching with Uber, Josie and I have talked with Director Newton, Chief Newton, I've met that issue twice, sorry, about kind of creating a partnership with Uber, just to kind of possibly lower prices for students.
And that's time.
To Vlasic? No, sorry. Senator Rolls, your campaign proposes expanding CyRide. How do you propose to do that, and what will the changes be?
Yeah. I kind of started this back in like April of 2024. I initially researched it as I've heard a lot about it from design students that stay in the College of Design really late and they just need to get somewhere across campus, but they don't necessarily feel safe walking, or maybe it's cold and they don't want to walk. But after kind of researching into it a little bit and seeing what issues there were, we had a meeting with Chief Newton about it, and CyRide is currently having an issue where people are misusing CyRide and just using it as a free ride to places. They don't want that. They want CyRide to be specifically used for issues of safety concerns. So we wanted to work, possibly, like I mentioned, possibly with Uber, but we're currently doing a ton of research into it. We've had a new senator who is currently researching it as well. So we're just kind of collaborating and doing a ton of research into it and just seeing what aspects we can look into to improve transportation late at night. Uber is a big issue, another thing that they've reached out to Chief Newton, and we just kind of want to see what avenues we can go down.
Vlasic, would you like to respond?
Yeah, we had a conversation with the Iowa State Police Department, Chief Newton, as well, and we had that long before break because we had the same question. How can we expand CyRide, right? It sounds like a phenomenal opportunity for students to stay safe. And we sat down and we had a pretty candid conversation with the chief, and he shared a lot of frustrations with the system. One, it's being misused really heavily. Two, students spend a lot of time complaining about the lack of service, but it's just an incredibly expensive system. And there are a lot of really big dislikes about CyRide on campus. And so in conversations with Chief Newton, the person who actually executes CyRide, We walked away from that conversation saying, okay, we should really support other opportunities for lower cost transportation, like Moonlight Express that CyRide offers.
Rolls, would you like to respond?
Sure. When I was initially researching this in April of 2024, I also came to the conclusion of possibly looking into Moonlight Express. I had a meeting with Barbara from CyRide. They're also kind of having issues with ridership on Moonlight Express. It's kind of another thing with Moonlight Express, they have two services. There's a fixed route service, which is much like our current bus routes. They go on a specific route through campus, and you can just get on, it's just like a traditional bus, but with later hours. And then they also have a direct door-to-door transportation, but that costs about $10 per student, and that's not operated through CyRide, it's operated through an outside organization called HERDA. So that's also something to look into as well, I believe.
Senator Vlasic, you have 45 seconds. Would you like to respond?
No.
And I made a mistake, and I didn't give you an opportunity to respond to the question about airport transportation. You have 45 seconds if you'd like to do so.
I kind of lost track of what exactly Eric said that I could rebut, but I will say that we talked about this airport transportation idea across campus to a lot of different student organizations. We've shared this idea, and every time we talk about it, we get a lot of head nods and a lot of smiles because it's a huge need. Nearly half of Iowa State's student population lives out of state. That means they could be international students or they could be students that have to travel halfway across the country. And so on top of an already incredibly expensive plane ticket, you shouldn't have to pay for a $200 Uber just to make it home to your family.
Thank you. Next question to Vlasic. Your campaign proposes publishing an end-of-year recap on how every cent was spent by student government. How feasible is this initiative?
I think it's incredibly feasible. I think you just need somebody who knows how to run Excel. You need somebody who can sit down, pull all of the numbers onto one sheet, and make a pie chart that shows how every single cent is spent. I don't think it's an incredibly difficult issue, but I think it's something that we need to address, right? Because as I was preparing to run for student body vice president, I really wanted to dig in and get the numbers right and understand how money was spent. And as I tried to do that, I realized that's almost impossible. I eventually had to send some emails, look in the online system, and I really still didn't come to a clear answer. And I don't think students should ever have to wonder where their money goes. So I think we need to be super transparent, super open, and find somebody who's willing to sit down and grind away on an Excel spreadsheet and figure out the cent-by-cent breakdown. But I know it's feasible. We've done it for our own campaign, and I think we can really easily do it for student government. I think it's one of those easy things that we can just get done and make student government more transparent on day one.
Senator Rolls, you have 45 seconds.
I think real quickly, there is a big difference between a campaign that only has $2,000 to spend and a giant organization that has over $2 million to spend. So I would see a great deal of difficulty with trying to publish a cent-by-cent basis. In terms of a article with the Daily, we have a daily published article after every Senate meeting that shows exactly what we did, exactly how much money was spent. And I mean, I believe the Daily also has an end-of-the-year report as well. It might not include all the money we spent over this term, but I feel like that system already kind of does exist. But in terms of transparency, yes. You can't just email our finance director, and I feel like they'd be more happy than give you an answer, but I feel like we could publish that information as well.
Senator Vlasic, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, a couple of questions. One, why do you have to email somebody to figure out where your money's going? I think that's a little silly. I think it should just be a Google search away. I tried that. It's not there. I think we should have that. That's super simple, super easy to fix. We can put it right on the website. We can publish on social media. We can have the Daily publicize it. Super easy. And then the second question that I have is, this is a really easy way to be more transparent to students, and I don't know why anybody would really be opposed to this. I mean, this is a super simple way to gain student trust and student involvement, and I think it's kind of a no-brainer.
Senator Rolls, you have 45 seconds.
I would like to state there's no way I said I am opposed to this information. I feel like another big thing is that your student activity fee is much like taxes. You can't just email the United States government and ask how my money's being spent. It's shown through the initiatives that the government has taken. Yes, your money might be kind of put into a pot and not used for a couple of years, but that's kind of on a case-by-case basis and what actually is done by the government. But I feel like, yes, it is part of our duty to being sure we're transparent with that fact, but it, like I kind of mentioned, is a lot like taxes. You can't just kind of ask where that money's going. But I feel like, yes, we do have a duty to be more transparent.
Flashlight at 45 seconds.
Yeah, I agree. We should be more transparent.
Perfect. And this next question is for Eric Rolls. Your campaign proposes expanding parking options. What specific ideas do you have to accomplish this?
Yeah, like I kind of mentioned with our meeting with Chief Newton, it's obviously been a hot button issue he's heard for many years. It's a difficult situation, but we don't necessarily have a concrete plan, but we have a really good idea and avenues to look down to. We've done a ton of research into the fact. Chief Newton said he's proposed an idea for a new parking lot. We just kind of want to dive into that a little bit more, keep up to date with that information. Another big issue, instead of just throwing money at a problem, like I mentioned before, is just reallocating it. There's a lot of issues with student parking, especially with visitor parking. In Freddie Court, they have like maybe 1 or 2 meters and they're limited to 30 minutes. So just making sure students have the accessibility to like short-term parking, might be a couple hours just to visit their friends or something. But we just want to make sure students have more access to campus. There's over 10,000 parking stalls here. We're pretty lucky in that fact.
And that's time. Flashlight, 45 seconds to respond.
Including every single parking spot that is on our relatively compact campus. There's actually nearly 20,000 parking spaces, including reserve and faculty spots on campus. And I think it's really important that when we stand up on the stage and we make promises to students, we should have a plan to execute, right? And we all love the idea of more parking spots. I mean, I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say that I would love to not have to take Orange 23 out of the commuter lot every day. But at the end of the day, it's a matter of fact. We shouldn't pave over the Campanile to add a parking garage. It's just that simple. There's nowhere to put a parking garage, and there's not an appetite from university administration for more parking on campus because we're blessed with a lot of parking already.
Senator Rolls?
Exactly, I kind of agree exactly with that. There actually has been issues with parking garages. They cost a lot to upkeep. The city has talked about this a lot. But I mean, I don't know much into that subject as well. It's just something Chief Newton brought up to us. But kind of like I've said before, reallocating our resources is our best way to do it. We have a ton of parking spots on campus, and yes, some of them are reserved for faculty, but it's also kind of faculty also pay for parking. It's not just students, and a lot of faculty have also had issues with getting parking on campus, but I don't really like the issue of first come, first serve, but there's only so much we can do. But Josie and I are more than happy to just do the building blocks to a final solution. We might not get a solution right now, but as long as we get the solution in progress, I feel like that's what gets us a final result.
And that's time. Senator Vlasic, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, I think we need to walk a really fine line with threatening to take away parking spots from faculty. We had a really great meeting with the Faculty Senate where a lot of good ideas were exchanged. And I did a quick poll of some of my professors. In fact, I asked one in a lab, what would you think about getting rid of your parking spot and giving it up to a student? He said, hell no. They are career professionals who work at this university, and they should not have to trudge through snow to make it to work in their lab and ultimately create innovation here at this university. I think it's important to keep a really strong relationship with the faculty here at Iowa State University instead of burn it over a few hundred parking stalls that only ultimately a few hundred students will get to use.
Senator Rolls, you have 45 seconds.
I was not suggesting taking parking spots away from faculty at all, but obviously besides reaching out to clubs, we've reached out to faculty. We had a meeting with Dr. Toya Younger. It was a really nice meeting with her. She's a really nice lady. That's where she mentioned she pays for parking as well, and parking is just a big issue on campus, but I just think it's something that we can work with the students and the faculty to possibly find a solution where we can reallocate our resources to, or just find a solution that might work in the future. Thank you.
This last question is for both candidates. In 2023, Jennifer Holliday became president by way of the president resigning. As vice president, will you be ready to become president if the circumstance arises? Vlasic, you're first.
Yeah, sorry, I just had to smile over at Jennifer a little bit because She stepped up into a role that was really difficult when she wasn't expecting it and excelled. And I've had her as a mentor throughout this campaign, and we talked quite at length about what it was like as she served as student body president. And I can tell you quite simply that if any situation were to arise and I had to step into some really big shoes and fill a really big role, I think I would be ready to do that because I have incredible mentors around me who not only have had the job, but are prepping me to be in a position to really excel in that job.
Senator Rolls, you may respond.
Yeah. I think beyond having good mentors, having the experience in student government really plays a big role into it. Vice President already needs a great deal of experience in the role to actually help. I feel like no matter what role you're stepping into, you're going to have a big learning curve. But especially if you're thrusted into a role without any experience, I feel like it would have a lot more great difficulty in that transition period. But that's where it kind of has coming up. Mentors in being in student government for 2 years, I've had a lot of people that have been either, speaker, vice president, vice president, finance director. There's just a ton of people that I've looked up to and have good connections with that I feel like would be more than happy to help me throughout that process if I were to get in that situation.
Vlasic, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I think it's important that we remember that if you do a quick scan through the student government constitution, you'll see that the only prerequisite to being president or vice president of the student body here at Iowa State University is being a student. And I check that box, right? So this focus on being involved in student government for years on years on years is not listed in the Constitution for a really valid reason, because every student, no matter who they are, and no matter what they believe in, should be able to step up and get into a leadership role. And the Constitution describes that really simply, and that's what I'm doing. I saw a problem, I saw a need, and I'm stepping up to fill it.
Senator Rolls, would you like to respond?
Sure. Yeah, our rules are written in the way that they are for a reason. It's meant to make sure students can feel included and supported, not necessarily supported, but yes. Making sure they have the accessibility to get in that role if they want. That doesn't necessarily mean they won't have a great deal of difficulty joining that position. When I first became a senator, I had a hard time actually learning what it was to become a senator, and that's just a senator. Imagine being vice president. I'm sorry, I don't mean to slight you in any way, but it's just something to take into account that it would there'd be a lot of difficulty without any prior experience joining that role.
Vlasic, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I have no doubts the job is difficult. I'm well aware of that, and I'm ready to take on those challenges. I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to make a difference here at this university.
We will now take a 10-minute intermission and collect questions from the audience. To submit questions, you can scan the QR code that will be posted on the screen during our break. Alternatively, if you're here in the Great Hall, you can look at the QR codes around the area. When we return, we will be asking the candidates questions been submitted by the student body, and you may ask questions either to an individual candidate or to both candidates. And we'll return in 10 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. Just as a quick announcement before we keep going forward, folks in the audience, you're welcome to have signs, but if you could please not make any distracting motions with that, and if you could keep it at least below your head, just keep it still. Again, you're allowed to have signs, but make sure you're not being a distraction with it. And then we can begin again with our audience questions. These are questions that have been submitted by the audience on our QR code on the live stream and here in the Great Hall. So first question is to Vlasic. If elected, what exactly is your financial plan? You're wanting to put signs and shelters at every campus stop. You're wanting to funding more accessible and efficient clubs. What is your plan for spending?
Yeah, I think our plan has two pieces. One is to make more money more available to more organizations. I think that's something we can all get behind, right? And as I mentioned earlier, as I wanted to dig in to really know the exact financials of student government, that was really difficult, right? Like, I don't have access to look at accurate dollar amounts right now, but I can tell you this from talking to people who have a breadth of experience within student government, they can tell you that there is money that is not being spent that could be spent to support students. And the second thing that we're gonna do with the financial process is we're gonna simplify it, right? I mentioned earlier that example of my friend who came to be just so confused trying to figure out the student government funding process, and it shouldn't have to be that way. If we want to be a campus that's truly accessible, student government that's truly accessible, one, we should make sure that if student organizations want money, we don't sit up there and tell them, oh, I don't think that that's a good use of money or that's maybe a good use of money. We're here to support students and fund them in the ways in which they see fit. And then we also need to make it simple so that everybody can get funding for student government.
Senator Rolls, you have 45 seconds to respond.
I think a big part of student government funding is, yes, we have our like $2.1, $2.9 million that we get from student activity fee, but not all of that goes directly to clubs. We also fund a lot of outside resources, whether that's asset or student engagement, student union board, the daily shop. There's a lot of things we fund directly, not through our annual allocations process, that we can't necessarily stop funding them just to give clubs more funding. I think that's just something to take into account when you're kind of working to give clubs more funding. You kind of also run into an issue where clubs might get funding from two different resources, and double dipping is, I believe, what there's a reason why our PNC is formatted the way it is, and that's to stop double dipping.
Vlasic, you have 45 seconds.
Eric, you're absolutely correct that we have contracts with different student organizations like Student Union Board and like the Iowa State Daily, things that need a regular amount of money every single year. But as a leader within student government, it's your responsibility to negotiate those contracts. So make sure that that organization has the funding they need. But we can't forget about, we have these really big student organizations on campus that bring a lot of value. We can't forget they bring a lot of value. But you also have to remember that there's other student organizations that are smaller, but also bring a lot of value to their members. So when that allocation time comes around, or when it's time to renegotiate contracts, or it's time to look at how we fund organizations here on campus, we need to make sure that if you are a student here at Iowa State University, you should feel the impacts of your $98 student activity fee every year.
Senator Rolls, you have 45 seconds to respond.
Yeah, whilst that is all good, there are a lot of other funding resources outside of student government. There's your academic department, maybe your just college in general will provide you funding. You can get funding through GPSS or student engagement. There's a lot of other options to get funding for your club if it might be specific to a major. There's a reason why our PNC is worded the way that organizations that get funding from, like, for a specific organization, or not necessarily organization, but a specific major can't get funding from us is because all of our money comes from the broader student body, and we want to limit the amount of money we give to a specific club that might only reach design
And that is
students.
time. Vlasic, you have 45 seconds.
Absolutely, I understand the PNC and what it is, but it gives a lot of students headaches. And it shouldn't have to. It shouldn't have to be confusing. It shouldn't have to be difficult, right? This is their money. And you're absolutely correct that there are a lot of organizations on campus that fund activities and events on campus. But you also have to remember that it is our job as student government to fund student organizations. We can't let that get out of perspective, that when student organizations come to student government to receive funding, they're expecting us to step up and help them execute on their mission and their event and their plans. We can't let it slip away that students want their student activities fees back in terms of their student organization. It's our responsibility to use that money to do so.
And that is unfortunately the time we have. Next question.
This question is for both candidates. We will start with Senator Rolls. As an advocate of the ISU students to the Board of Regents, what are the top 2 issues students are currently facing that you would advocate they address? You have a minute.
Yeah, a big thing that we did in student government this last term was our Board of Regents event. We hosted the Board of Regents on the South Campanile lawn just to kind of get to know all of our regents and just kind of let them know, get a connection on the personal level. That's something the Board of Regents hasn't really done since, well, ever to my knowledge, but we just want to build a connection with them and make sure they can directly come to us or we can directly go to them for students' issues on campus. Obviously, big issues of affordability, like I've mentioned before. Like with Bob Carver, we had issues with textbook affordability, and we kind of reach out to the Board of Regents to see if we can get support on the state level, just to see what resources we can do and what we can do to make college more affordable for all students.
Vlasic, you may respond. You have a minute.
I think the top 2 things that if I had the opportunity to be a part of the Board of Regents that I would do is address 2 issues. One, that's our actual campus. It's the facilities we have here. The Board of Regents and its responsibility is the overriding decision maker on these campuses and what they look like. And I go into a lot of different buildings on this campus every single day, and I see a lot of them in disrepair or in need of renovation or in need of just upkeep in general. And so I would advocate to the Board of Regents that we go to a world-class institution here at Iowa State University, and our facilities should reflect that. And similar to what Eric said, my second thing is affordability, right? We know that inflation's going on. We know that everything has become more expensive, and so the Board of Regents has had to increase the cost of tuition at all 3 Regent universities. But what I can say is that I will stand in the way of attempts to increase tuition. Again, I think that's something that comes up year after year as student government meets with the Board of Regents, is explaining that things are expensive right now. Students are struggling and they can't afford a more expensive tuition. And so I would cover those 2 things if I had the opportunity.
Senator Rolls, you have 45 seconds to respond.
I think when you brought up the facilities upkeep, it's a very limited thing where the Board of Regents has authority on the campus in terms of upkeep. A lot of upkeep in terms of buildings is done through FP&M. When you get to like bigger projects on campus, like Sci-Town, that does need Board of Regents authorization. The football stadium is getting new scoreboards that needed Board of Regents authorization. But if you're just talking about daily like building improvements, I don't think that would go through the Board of Regents. That's just kind of related to FP&M.
Now, I'm not talking about burnt out light bulbs or leaky faucets. I'm talking about like major renovations to buildings that we go to school in every day. Your lecture hall shouldn't have the pop-in ceiling crumbling above you as you try to take notes. The library you should go to should have functioning restrooms. Like, those are big picture improvements. They aren't just daily maintenance, right? Although we could always work on that. I'm talking big picture improvements that make this university a better university for students that go here today. Makes it more enjoyable, it makes it more fun, and it just makes going to class more pleasant. But I'm also talking about, advocating for changes that pull more students in this university, that pull students from across our country into a diverse population here at Iowa State to really innovate.
This next question is also to both candidates. Senator Rolls, you're first. If you're not elected, in what capacity will you be involved in student government?
Yeah, I've been very passionate about student government for my past 2 years. When Josie asked me to do it, I was more than happy to do it. It's obviously something I've looked up to. Quinn has been a great mentor for my past 2 years in student government. I've always kind of looked up to him. He's been a great person to do the role. But I've always liked it being a senator, and if Josie didn't ask me to do this, I would continue to be a senator, and that's just what I've been passionate about, is supporting students regardless of if I win an election or not. And that still applies. If I don't win this election, I would just become a senator again, as that's just my passion for Iowa State and supporting students in general.
Lashik, same question to you. You have a minute.
Yeah. One of the things that really stood out about this is Colby and I really started to talk about what this campaign would look like, is you have incredible power to make incredible difference in this community. You have power to work with administration to make this campus more enjoyable for all students. But then you also have a nearly $2.7 million budget that you get to allocate to student organizations across campus and ultimately make this a more involved university. And it was really cool to learn about that. And I want to take you back to my freshman year here at Iowa State. One of the first weeks, I sat down in my dorm room in Maple, and I watched the Student Government Senate, and I have ever since. I followed along, I've been involved, and I've been trying to get involved in student government for a while. I've just had a difficulty, I guess, hearing back about it. So I will continue to be involved not only as an active viewer of student government, but hopefully tomorrow in my confirmation hearing, I'll also become a senator where I can continue to advocate for students no matter what position I'm in.
Senator Rolls, you have 45 seconds.
I don't mean to insult you anyway, but I know Quinn and Martin on our new administration have been a lot better in terms of responding to emails and communication. I'm not trying to say you actually haven't been doing or you've been lying, but I think being a senator is a really noble thing to do, regardless if you win or not. I guess we'll get to see how it's like tomorrow. We'll see you there. I think being a senator is a big deal as well, especially if you can't become a presidential candidate, but I feel like this is kind of your first priority regardless of what it is. That's just kind of what you should focus on first, regardless if you plan on being a senator or not, but yeah, thank you.
Vlasic, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, I've tried to get involved in student government for a while. Here at the Student Government Expo, I asked about joining student government and I got no response. Here when I grilled at the Board of Regents, I asked about joining student government and I got no response. Here is 2 emails sent in November of last year when I asked about joining student government, I got no response. Here's a Snapchat to a leader in student government, no response. And then here's 2 emails I sent over break asking to join student government, no response. I've tried to join student government for a long time, Eric, and I just haven't heard back. I'm not pointing fingers or putting blame on anybody, but I am excited to get involved and really make a difference here at this university.
Senator Rolls, you have 45 seconds.
I will kind of assure you there's no reason for us to not really let you get into student government. Our whole kind of does to accept leaders regardless of experience or kind of background. I'm sorry if you didn't hear any response back, so sorry about that. I don't necessarily know exactly who you've been reaching out to or not, but I think that's just kind of a big thing is just student government accepts leaders regardless of what they are or like what their background is, but yeah, sorry to hear that.
Vlasic, you have 45 seconds if you'd like.
Yeah, I talked about this experience, and while it was difficult and very confusing and kind of demoralizing, I didn't give up my resolve, and I'm still excited to get involved in student government, but I can make this promise to students that if you're watching this tonight or you're here today and you think that this is kind of cool, the impact that you can make at this university is kind of cool, you won't have to send 5 emails to get involved. You won't have to reach out multiple times and get no response. We will make a commitment to you today that all you have to do is raise your hand and say, I want to make a difference, and you're on board.
Senator Rolls, about 20 seconds if you'd like.
I will kind of say, from my experience on our Rules Committee and being an upper level of our Student Senate, I don't know a situation where you've had to send more than maybe 2 emails to get some sort of meeting. I believe there's 1 email to your constituency council, and if your constituency council approves you, you get sent to our Rules Committee, and that might not even take an email.
And that is time. Vlasic, you have about 10 seconds if you like.
I mean, I know that's not the process, but I have proof here I sent multiple emails, like half a dozen. So I know that's not the process, and we should stick to the process, but I'm looking forward to a day in which, all the student has to do is... Thank you.
Next question is for Vlasic. You're pushing for student government accountability. What specifically will your recap show that isn't already available?
Yeah, I think one of the things that the current recap of student government shows is it shows $50,000 here and $500,000 here and $6 million to this organization, and it's really hard as an individual student here to take big numbers like that and quantify them to you as an individual, and you shouldn't have to do the math there, right? So that breakdown, not only will it show the big picture spending, literally every single dollar spent by student government, which students deserve to know, but it will also show penny by penny of your total $98 that you give to student government every year through the student activity fee. It'll show you how every single cent of your $98 was spent. And I think that's incredibly important for students to know, is that not only does it keep us accountable to the student population in which we serve, but it also gives us the ability to show these are the cool things we're doing. We want you to get involved and make a difference.
Senator Rolls, you have 45 seconds to respond.
I think a big student government has been trying to be more accountable. Our last administration has made great strides in that, and I can applaud them for that. Student government is meant to serve our people, and just making sure students actually know what we're doing is kind of our main priority. There's been a lot of work this term on actually getting the information out to students, what we've been doing. There's a Know Your Leaders series, we've been doing a lot of work with that. Just a lot of outreach events is one of our main priority. That's just how we spread the word of what student government has been doing, and actually showing them where their money is going to is just by all the events we're hosting and our outreach, so students can actually know what they're going to. Yeah.
Blaszek, you have 45 seconds to respond.
I agree with you. Transparency has been improving, starting with the holiday administration where they made that a priority, and then going into Martin and Quinn's administration where they've made transparency with students a responsibility. But I think it's really important as a group here, as a group of individuals who use student dollars to make change. I think we can always be more accountable, right? I don't think there's ever a step in which we couldn't be too accountable, right? We can always continue to improve on where we're at and continue to be more transparent to the student population in which we serve.
This next question is for Senator Rolls. As a member of the CyRide board, can you talk about your plans for improving CyRide?
Yeah. So just recently I got elected to our CyRide Board of Trustees. So I sit on the CyRide board with the city manager and as well as some mayoral appointees. I'm pretty much just working directly with CyRide to make sure they know what students want. And I think I just got recently, the city council voted on my position on the 11th, and it got confirmed then, and I just got sworn in this last Friday. Our first meeting is on Thursday. I look forward to a pretty productive meeting. We just talk about a lot of talk about budgets and whatnot, but I think having the direct relationship with CyRide and Barbara, just to make sure we can reach out to them whenever we want, just to make sure they know what students want and just what they want out of us and how we can improve CyRide in general. We want to make it more efficient and just more accessible for all students, regardless of where they are on campus. Thank you.
Flashlight, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, I agree. CyRide should be more accessible and easier to use for all students, and that's why we have real physical changes enacted in our platform. These changes look like adding signs or screens at every single stop, similar to the one you see at Upper Friley and UDCC, that show you when the next bus is coming. And then could have future iterations that'll show you, what routes do you need to take to get to the doctor's office and how long will it take? What routes we need to go to get to the pharmacy or to any of those essential services just being a student here at Iowa State. So we have an incredible public transportation system here in Ames, Iowa. Number 3 per capita ridership in the nation, just behind San Francisco, which is pretty incredible, right? So I think we need to continue to build that strong relationship and make physical, real, touchable, changes to CyRide that ultimately improve the accessibility and the student experience.
Senator Rolls, you have 45 seconds.
I just kind of wanted to ask for clarification. Are you talking about every single stop on campus?
Correct.
Okay. I do kind of foresee an issue with that. Not all of our stops on campus are an enclosed space. A lot of them are just a sign on a concrete pad, especially when you get to adding a sign. This is something I talked about, Barbara, when I had my inauguration with them. The screens cost a lot of money, and also so does running the electricity to a stop if it doesn't have electricity running to it. So you kind of have to factor in the cost of the screen, the cost of running electricity to it, and obviously you have to protect that screen from the elements somehow, so you kind of have to add either an awning or some kind of porch.
Vlasic, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, I would disagree with you on the really expensive piece. I think if there's something we can spend a relatively low dollar amount that will ultimately make CyRide more accessible for students, I think it's a really easy no-brainer thing to just go ahead and do. In terms of stops on campus, CyRide has some long-term goals in making bus shelters on campus. So we're not going to put up 20 screens all at once on campus. What we are going to do is we'll start with the most traffic areas in terms of ridership. We'll start with those and slowly improve and make a plan to get federal grants to add CyRide shelters at certain stops, right? We want to consistently and always work towards making CyRide easier to use for students and ultimately more accessible for everybody.
Senator Rolls, you have 45 seconds.
I mean, if anything, I feel like I would know how CyRide works. I do sit on their board directly, and I've had a lot of relationships. I've had a good connection with Emily Boland. She's our ex officio to the city council, and she's sit on the CyRide board for a long time as well. The screens at Friley were a pilot program that have been in progress for a while. They've been testing how the screens have been going and how the engagement has worked. They really like the outcome so far, and so they're kind of just waiting on us to kind of reach out to them. Obviously, they don't want to necessarily be the primary funder for that because it's on our campus. So we would have to put a lot more money toward that as well. They might be able to pitch in some, but they wouldn't be the primary funder of it.
Thank you both.
This next question is directed to both candidates. We will start with Flashek. What is one positive attribute you see in each of your opposing candidates? You have a minute to respond.
Yeah, I'll start with Eric first. The entire evening, Eric has remained respectful and calm. He hasn't spoken over top of me or yelled at me or attempted to insult me, and I think that's something commendable. And so, Eric, I do appreciate that. It takes someone who's has the ability to stand up and do the right thing. So I do appreciate that. And then Josie, one thing that I have noticed about Josie, it's reflective in the classroom and it's reflective outside of that, is she has a commitment to sustainability on campus. That's something that I know she's incredibly passionate about. In fact, Eric as well. And so I commend her for finding something that makes her passionate and then taking action on it. So nice work, Josie.
Senator Rolls?
Yeah, I mean, Will has as well been very respectful. He's a great speaker, very steadfast in his motions, and then obviously they have the drive and the passion to actually go for these roles. It's a big step, especially if you don't have the experience to seek out this role. So I got to applaud you for that. That takes a lot of courage. And Colby as well, he's had a lot of experience with governmental relations. So obviously he has a lot of passion for that as well. And just seeking out this role in general, regardless of both of you, takes a lot of courage. So I can applaud that.
Thank you both.
And this question is to both candidates, and we'll start with Senator Rolls. Can you please explain what partnership you hope to have with the Inter-Residence Hall Association as an organization that ensures the well-being of 7,000 plus students? Do you believe it is necessary to improve the partnership with that organization and the Res Life community? And how do you plan to do so? Senator Rolls, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, I believe for the past 2 IRHA meetings, I've been to both the whole time. Obviously, residence life is a big part of our campus. It's pretty much the first step for students coming on campus is to go to a residence hall, so we want to make sure they have a good experience regardless. IRHA is pretty much the primary part of that, so we want to have a good relationship with them and make sure students first coming to Iowa State have a good experience, and they just continue to be here and be successful in their academics and just their personal life. Yeah, we had, like I mentioned, Josie and I have been at the last meeting this last week. Went really well. We had a good conversation. We had good conversations with the people there. I believe I see a couple of our IRHA parliamentarians here, so I got to thank you guys for that. It's just the amount of support and collaboration we can do with them just to build a nice relationship with each other and just make sure we understand each other and just can collaborate freely.
Flashlight, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, I remember when I was a freshman and I lived in Maple Hall. I remember being up on the 5th floor. It was cold out. It was November, and I remember feeling just like, oh, what am I going to do with the rest of my weekend? Like, some of my friends went home. You know, I'm kind of bored. I think we've all felt that, especially living in a residence hall, right? Especially when your friends go home for the weekend. And one of the things that we think could be an incredible collaboration with Inter-Residence Hall Association, IRHA, is getting them involved in our homecoming celebration. When students are here here for months and then they're inside their residence halls as it's starting to get colder, we have an opportunity for them to get out of their residence halls, to get onto Central Campus and interact with students of all ages, all backgrounds, and all different experiences. And I think that's one of the things that's most exciting about making homecoming this really incredible event for all students, is we have the opportunity to say to anybody, whether you live on campus or off campus, say, we want you to get involved in this, and we want you to be excited about getting to know everybody that goes here to Iowa State.
And then Senator Rolls, you have 45 seconds to respond.
Yeah. My first 2 years I lived on campus, I lived in Barton Hall my first year. Really old, 100-plus-year-old building with no air conditioning, with no elevators. I mean, regardless of how old the building is, it's a really fun experience just to be kind of on your own for the first time and just getting to know the people around you and getting to know fresh faces. And I think I actually heard about IRHA before I even heard of student government. And even before that, I had my RA reach out to me and see if I want to be part of the hall council. And I think that's just a great opportunity just to kind of familiarize yourself with the people that live in your building and even people that live across campus in a different dorm. But it's just a great way to get familiarized with campus and the people that you can possibly meet.
And that's time. Vlasic, you have 45 seconds if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. I commend IRHA for the work that they do. We know it's no easy task to support and advocate for that many students who live on campus. So I commend them for the work that they do. And I'm looking forward to next year when I have the opportunity to sit down at a table with them and figure out how we can make the residence life for all students here at Iowa State better.
Senator Rolls, if you'd like, 45 seconds.
Yeah, IRHA already hosts, they host a ton of events that are fun, and actually even just Hall specifically host a ton of fun events for everybody. And I think it'd be really cool if we promote all those events, just so students can just get out of the dorms or maybe just even get out of their apartment just to go have a fun time with some people and just do some crafts or just to make some blankets or something. And I feel like that's just a good idea, just to kind of work with IRHA to promote their events so students can just get out and experience Iowa State and the people that inhabit it.
Vlasic, you have 45 seconds if you'd like.
I'm okay.
Thank you both. Entering the final section of our debate, each candidate will have 90 seconds to make closing statements, starting with Vlasic.
Absolutely. Cyclones, we've covered a lot of ground this weekend, but I want you to remember these 3 takeaways. We will focus on achievable change that can actually happen in 1 year, whereas our opponents will make promises that are outside of the scope and responsibility of student government. We're going to cultivate events that pull students together onto campus, whereas our opponents will focus on the things that pull us apart. And finally, my opponent's going to talk about how they feel about the changes that need to be made on campus, but Colby and I will just get them done. Our team will make the vision that you see for this university a reality. Our campus will be safer, there'll be more opportunities to get involved, and student government will finally support you. We're going to collaborate with our partners on campus to make homecoming a cannot-miss event. We're going to support ISUPD and other partners in their mission to improve safety and reduce sexual violence, and we're going to make transportation work for you. If you're tired of the same old excuses that restrict student success, we're not the candidates for you. If you want real change, new perspectives, and people who will hear you in student government, Colby Brandt and Will Vlasic are your candidates. I want to thank my opponent, Eric, the Election Commission, the Iowa State Daily for this debate. Iowa State students, this is your opportunity to make an impact on the university that you love. On March 4th and 5th, vote Colby Brandt and Will Vlasic. Thank you.
Senator Rolls, you have 90 seconds.
First of all, I'd kind of like to thank everybody that came out tonight in person. It's really interesting to sit up here with a bunch of people in front of me and just talk about stuff that I'm really passionate about. But I'd also like to thank the people that are watching online. I know my mom and dad are, so hi. But tonight we talked about a lot of aspects, from sexual violence prevention, club funding, to accountability. And these are all topics that Josie and I have already had experience with outside of our campaign. And part of our campaign is to expand upon our previous knowledge and experience, to build upon that and make student government the best it can be and support the students as much as it can. We already do a ton, and I feel like it's time we can do more than ever. And through our campaign, I feel like with our points and our goals, I feel like that's a big part of our success for the future. And I hope I made an impact on all of you guys tonight. And if you guys have any questions, you can come talk to me or Josie, or you can come talk to our Instagram. But yeah, thank you guys. And remember to vote on March 4th and 5th. I think there'll be in-person stations as well as through your email. So a lot of options for you. But yeah, thank you. And I also like to thank Will. He's been a good person to debate against. But yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you both. This concludes the 2025 vice presidential debate. Thank you to both campaigns for attending tonight, and thank you for members of the Election Commission and the Iowa State Daily, as well as the MU technical staff that helped in preparation for this event. The presidential debate will take place in a little over a week on February 27th at 6 p.m. right here in the Great Hall of the MU, and will also be live streamed in the Student Government YouTube channel. Thank you again for everyone involved. Have a great night, and go Cyclones.